Israelis are talking about that their preemptive attack was successful. On the other hand, Hezbollah is saying that they have achieved nothing. What do we know from what's going on between them?
Well, we have two competing narratives. One is that Israel carried out this massive retaliation strike, making use of the most advanced, military capabilities in their arsenal: F-35 fighters, 100 aircraft, targeting a number of sites preemptively. We also know that Hezbollah retaliated using low technology equipment that appeared to saturate and carve a hole or a gap in the Israeli air defense, which was then exploited by drones, which carried out a very successful attack against one of the most sensitive intelligence sites in all of Israel, Unit 8200. They're basically the equivalent of the National Security Agency of the United States. Hezbollah has said that the Israelis hit nothing. We don't know. We don't know what the battle damage assessment is. What we do know is that both sides have toned down the rhetoric at this point in time, and that it looks like the emphasis is being shifted back to Gaza for the time being. I think this is just part of the managed escalation. I think, though, if the Israeli preemption was successful, Hezbollah still demonstrated that it didn't preempt anything, that Hezbollah was able to penetrate Israel's air defense and launch a successful strike using very low technology weapons. But if the Israeli intervention was not successful, as Hezbollah is telling the truth, Israel has actually given away a lot of information. First of all, this was a major military operation, 100 aircraft, F-35s, refueling. It involves targeting. And we're talking about immediate targeting because this is a preemptive strike. So Israel's saying that they are detecting things as it's happening to try and prevent an imminent threat. I don't know what Hezbollah's intelligence capabilities are. I can tell you that if I were a Hezbollah intelligence officer, based upon what Israel did, I would be able to reconstruct or deconstruct the Israeli actions and identify the various nodes of criticality when it comes to preventing Israel from doing this again. Israel gave away a lot doing this attack, and I believe, if Hezbollah is right, accomplished little or nothing. Hezbollah claims that it didn't stop any of the rockets that were intended to be fired. They were all Katyushka rockets, very low sophistication. Israel did manage to destroy some of the launchers after they had launched their rockets, but none of Hezbollah's advanced capabilities were affected by this. So Israel gave away the farm and accomplished very little. So advantage Hezbollah, I would say right now, but neither side wants to see this thing escalate out of control. And so I think right now we have a lull in the escalation. But until they get a ceasefire agreement, until this Gaza conflict is brought to an end, the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah will continue to go through this cycle of escalation management.
Did Hezbollah use its ballistic missiles? If not, why they didn't use it?
They didn't use them because they're not ready to escalate to that level. When Hezbollah unveils its ballistic missiles, they will be striking the heart of Tel Aviv. They will be striking central Israel. They will be striking the most sensitive targets in Israel. And this is the kind of escalation that Israel can't allow to de-escalate. This now means decisive, full-scale engagement between Hezbollah and Israel. So these weapons are held in reserve by Hezbollah until which time they need to be used. Right now, Hezbollah didn't need to send that signal. They sent a different signal, which is, you killed one of our people, we're trying to kill one of yours. And the rumor is that they were going after the head of Unit 8200. Whether or not they were successful in this, there's some reports that say they were. There's some reports that say they weren't. But it was clearly an effort by Hezbollah to kill a very senior Israeli military official, and that's the kind of retaliation that prevents escalation, meaning that it is reciprocal in nature as opposed to being totally disproportional to what Israel had done to Hezbollah.
There is an interview with a 77 years old Israeli general with hearts. He's talking about how important is this war of attrition for Israel, and they're not capable of having this type of war, a conventional war, a war of attrition with Hezbollah or Iran. And do you think, is there anybody in the Netanyahu administration taking this type of mindset serious?
Well, I mean, first of all, Israel's never prepared for anything like this. This is such a long conflict has not been part of Israel's operational or strategic planning. I've been saying this for some time, that Israel lacks the capacity to continue this indefinitely. They will exhaust themselves militarily, they will exhaust themselves economically, and eventually they will exhaust themselves from a socio-political standpoint as Israelis with dual citizenship, with that second passport, start to flee the country because Israel is no longer a country that's livable, at least not to the lifestyle that the Israelis had hoped for by moving there. Netanyahu is in the fight of his political life. This is the final battle. This is about his legacy. And so a lot of what Netanyahu does isn't about the legitimate national security interests of Israel or what's best for the Israeli people, but it's all about what's best for Benjamin Netanyahu. To retain political viability up until the very end, to ensure that when he does step out of the political arena for the last time, that it is as somebody who is victorious, somebody who is seen as fulfilling his mandate of securing Israel. It's very difficult to do under these circumstances. He, of course, is the man who helped drive a decisive wedge amongst the Israeli population because of his efforts to politicize the Israeli judiciary. This is before October 6th, when he was seeking changes in the basic law of Israel that would allow the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, to control judicial appointments and to question judicial decisions. This was done for very selfish reasons because Netanyahu, of course, has ongoing corruption cases. And if he is ever hauled before an Israeli court on these charges, he will probably be found guilty and sent away for the rest of his life. Or, even if he's not imprisoned, it'll be the end of his career, and the last thing he'll be known as is being, convicted of corruption. He wants to be known as the man who saved Israel. He's one of Israel's greatest leaders, etc. But he's also the man who was at the helm on October 7th when Hamas launched its surprise attack. He's also now the man who has been at the helm for the longest war Israel's ever fought, and it's a war that Israel's not winning. And so he is desperate to find some sort of political solution to this problem. And so every decision that's made, I believe, is couched in terms of how does this benefit Benjamin Netanyahu, not in terms of how does this benefit the Israeli people and Israeli security.
And we've seen something similar to what we've seen before. When we had an Iranian attack on Israel, we didn't see a lot of pictures coming out of Israel. Right now, they've banned anything, taking picture, videos, sending out. And if this attack that Hezbollah did on Israel was not successful, what they're not letting people take pictures, reporting if something happened, it seems that they were we can say, successful in their attack.
I don't know. I'm a guy with experience in what we call battle damage assessment, and one of the things we do when we launch attacks is we want to get imagery of the results so that we can determine whether or not we accomplished what it was we were seeking to accomplish. Um, you know, do we have to strike again? If we failed, why did we fail? There's a lot of intelligence that's in that. Um, why would Israel want to provide battle damage assessment to Hezbollah? Even if Hezbollah failed, there's invaluable information to be gained by looking at imagery. Why didn't we hit that? Was this about targeting, or was there a defense capability that we weren't aware of? Things of that nature. So, no, under no circumstance should Israel allow anybody to film anything. They're in an active war right now with Hezbollah. Any imagery is useful to Hezbollah, especially post-strike imagery that talks about the success or failure of the attack. So, I understand the public's desire to know, but in the case of something like this, there is no need to know on the part of the public, because by releasing the information to the public, you're releasing it to Hezbollah, and Hezbollah will be able to gain some intelligence value from this. So I don't know, is Hezbollah, Hezbollah also, I would imagine has its own post-strike reconnaissance capability. At some point in time, Hezbollah may fly a drone over that area. From their perspective, hopefully sooner rather than later. You get the best BDA the closer you are to the event, and then they can release the images. But it's not Israel's job to do Hezbollah's work. Israel's not. There's no requirement for Israel to release imagery that either contradicts or proves what Hezbollah says happened.
It seems that we are two different type of ideas within the Netanyahu or inside Israel. Even within the Netanyahu administration, we have the point of view of his Ministry of Defense and his type, and the people who are more in their mindset, more are closer to what Netanyahu thinks at the moment. Do you think that who has the upper hand right now in Israel? Is Gallant capable of winning over Netanyahu in the long run?
Well, first of all, I'll say that my experience in Israel, and it was extensive, the idea that there's only two points of view is ludicrous. I remember once sitting down at a table early on with senior defense officials and foreign ministry officials. There were maybe a dozen people around the table. And we were talking about issues that one would have thought Israel would have been unified on. There were 12 different points of view. 12 different points of view. Nobody agrees on anything. Everybody believes they have the right. And they were all 12 points of view were, soundly defended, articulated. Oftentimes the differences are in nuances and then, on the periphery. But the idea that within the Israeli cabinet, there's Gallant and then there's Netanyahu is absurd. Even within Gallant's staff, there will be people who have different points of view, and they will articulate this. Surrounding Netanyahu will be people with different points of view. So the idea that this is a black and white case, it's Gallant's way or Netanyahu's way, it doesn't work that way. Both sides will be working the issue from the periphery, meaning that they will be seeking to take people. You'll try to divide it. This is now we get into shades of gray. If Netanyahu is dark gray, those people whose opinions closely resemble Netanyahu will be hanging around Netanyahu. Light gray is Gallant. Those people are hanging around there. And then what Gallant and Netanyahu are trying to do is poach these people off to sit there and say, I need to get some of these dark gray guys to lighten up and come over here and bring things. So it's a very complicated process, a lot of discussion. And it's not about Gallant winning over Netanyahu. That isn't going to happen. It's about Gallant winning over enough people who currently surround Netanyahu so that the totality of the opposition can put pressure on Netanyahu. This is about politics, Israeli politics, and it's very complicated. In America, we got Republican and Democrat, with a couple independents out there, but mainly Republican and Democrat. In Israel, you have many political parties, and then within the political parties, you have factions. This coalition that Netanyahu has cobbled together is a very weak coalition. hinges on Netanyahu doing exactly what the minority members want, because he can't afford to lose any member of this coalition. And so that faction that has, only one or two seats, Netanyahu can't lose them. So that faction now can start making demands of Netanyahu that Netanyahu has to pay attention to, because if they walk away, he's out of government. And so what's happening here is a much more complicated internal dialogue taking place within Israel than maybe people in the West understand.
Again, getting back to the points that this Israeli general was mentioning, that he said that Israel is not prepared to go after a war of attrition. The situation of the Israeli army is not that good right now, and because of the suffering that they have experienced in this conflict in Gaza. And on the other hand, the outcome would be the continuation of this conflict, the way that they have been carrying out all more than 11 months, 10 months that they're doing this. And he says that is not in favor of Israel to continue this way.
Well, he's right. I mean, literally, Israel is failing. Israel has lost. I have said repeatedly, I think the die has been cast. Israel cannot recover from this conflict. Economically, the Israeli economy is in tatters, and it's not going to rebuild. One of the key dialogues that's taking place on the side is the United States is trying to get Saudi Arabia to reconcile its differences with Israel, to recognize Israel, to enter into diplomatic relations with Israel. And the concept that empowers this is the notion that Israel will serve as the economic hub, sort of the engine, the technology-driven engine of whatever partnership can be crafted. Saudi money with Israeli know-how creates this, team that can dominate the region and have a major impact on the world. But Israel will never again rest in peace. It's over. Gaza has proven that. Until there's a Palestinian state, Israel will never rest in peace. And if Israel's not resting in peace, then their economy can't recover. And their economy right now is devastated, gutted, billions of dollars of losses. The Israeli society is deeply fractured now. There will be people who say we have to accept a new reality if we want to survive. There will be others who say we must double down and create a greater Israel and eliminate this Palestinian scourge once and for all. Israel will never again be united on the direction it needs to go. There will always be this debate. And I think right now, because of the pressure being placed on Israel from around the world, there will be a discussion that leads to the creation of a Palestinian state. And as soon as you have that happen, some important changes have to take place inside of Israel, some of which Israel will never recover from. And one of these is the disenfranchisement of these Brooklyn Jews, I call them, these American Jews who have flown over to Israel to steal land in the West Bank, to murder Palestinians, to create these illegal settlements. These settlements will have to be dismantled. This will cause huge domestic problems, maybe even take Israel up to the brink of civil war. And basically, all of these factors are creating in Israel that is not a safe place to live, is not a good place to live, not a good place to raise children. And I think you're going to see millions of Israelis who have dual citizenship flee Israel. And now you have a demographic problem. Right now, 9 million Jews, roughly a little bit more than that in terms of non-Jews, Arabs, Muslims, and Christians. But when you start dropping that population, when the number of Jews starts dropping down to 7 million, to 6 million, to 5 million, suddenly Israel stops being viable in terms of its current makeup. And, the concept of a two-state solution yields to the reality of a single-state solution. And I think that's the direction that we're headed. And I don't think there's anything Israel can do to stop this. Now, the question is, does Israel want to do this in a way that minimizes damage to whatever Jewish entity remains in the Holy Land, or do they want to do something that leads to the total destruction of Israel? if Netanyahu and his ilk have this way, they'll lead to the total destruction of what we today call Israel. If saner minds come in and start working diplomatically, I do believe that we can work our way towards a single Palestinian state where Jews, Muslims, Christians can live together in peace and harmony. But it's going to be called Palestine, not Israel. It's not going to be a Jewish state. It's going to be a state dominated by Muslims, but hopefully a Muslim state that respects the Jewish faith, respects the Holy Land, and the Jewish role in the Holy Land, along with the Christian role in the Holy Land. In some way, they can all get. Is this pie in the sky stuff? Right now, it seems like it, but that's the vector. I think that's the direction that this is headed. This notion of somehow Israel emerging from this stronger, more unified, part of a broader coalition of, Arab nations is fantasy. That's what the Abrams Accord was about. Hamas's attack on October 7th sunk that ship.
One of the points that Nasrallah was talking about in his speech was that they were waiting to see if something happens with with those negotiations between Israelis and Gazans. Do you think they're still hoping for have a political settlement between Israelis and Gazans?
I mean, there will have to be a political settlement because Israel can't survive if this war continues. You've had repeated Israeli generals, retired, say that in a year's time Israel will collapse on its own volition because it can't continue this fight. So eventually, Hamas will not be defeated. I mean, we have another Israeli general that has admitted that Hamas is not just a physical entity, but it's a political point of view. It's an ideology, and you can't defeat that militarily. In fact, the more Israel commits genocide, the stronger Hamas gets from an ideological standpoint. So the reality is, Israel is going to have to deal with Gaza on the terms set by the Gazans. And right now, the leadership of the Gazans is Hamas. There are things being done to try and make such a dialogue possible, which is, for instance, China brought together 14 different Palestinian factions to create some sort of singularity that's inclusive of Hamas and Fatah, so that when Israel is ready for meaningful discussions, that which sits across from it isn't going to be called Hamas. And that might be a political compromise that has to be made in order to get not only Israel to the table, but to get Fatah, the Palestinian, the PLA, Palestinian Authority, Palestinian Liberation Organization, get them to the table as well, because there are factions within the Palestinian community that are not supportive of Hamas, that are deeply resentful of Hamas and would not participate in any, large-scale discussions or dialogue, with Hamas representing them all. So what China did, and again, Russia played an important role in helping facilitate this. China is at least moving in the direction of creating a governance entity that Hamas factors in, but it's not called Hamas. And at some point in time, Israel will have no choice but to sit down at a table across from them. Will be sitting somebody from this entity. That's the only way this ends. This doesn't end in an Israeli victory. That's for sure.
If you were Chinese, how do you feel about the attitude of the United States when it comes to Gaza? Because they were trying to bring these groups together, but we see that the United States attitude is totally different. They're trying to help Israel in whatever they want to do in Gaza. Do you think that they're feeling that the United States is helping these negotiations or something else?
I don't think there's anybody in the world, including Americans, if they can speak off camera, who believes that America is facilitating in a positive way negotiations. We have betrayed ourselves by siding so strongly with Israel. And in fact, the irony is by siding so strongly with Israel, we've actually done Israel a great disservice, because we would have been better positioned had we retained a modicum of independence where we could be trusted as a broker. And then we could, help babysit a peace process that maybe gave Israel more of what they're looking for. But today, nobody trusts us. And one of the reasons is all we bring is death and destruction. Our only solution is more war, more weapons, more confrontation. I mean, China comes in and their solution has nothing to do with war. It has to do with facilitating peace, creating opportunities for dialogue that leads to, political stability that translates into economic stability. So I think there's growing recognition in the Middle East and indeed around the world that if you take American hand of friendship, it's going to lead to a conflict that will probably end up destroying you. The Ukrainian precedent is there, but so is the Kurdish precedent, so is the Afghan precedent. The United States hasn't hit one out of the ballpark in terms of a conflict that promotes its geopolitical position in a long, long time, and we're not going to. The world is tired of war. The world is exhausted of war. The world is looking for peaceful outcomes, and the United States therefore becomes part of the problem, not part of the solution, because all we know is war.
How do you find Iran right now? Do you think they're going to attack Israel within 72 hours, as Washington is pointing out?
Iran has every right to attack Israel anytime it wants to, given what Israel did in terms of assassinating a senior Hamas official in Tehran. But Iran has to look out for Iran's best interest, and Iran also has to keep an eye on the bubble. If Iran is part of a resistance that's dedicated to supporting the notion of the creation of a Palestinian state, understand that they're winning. Right now, they're winning. We just had a long discussion about how difficult of a situation Israel's in. And one of the reasons why there won't be stability down the road is because of the role Iran plays in facilitating the efforts of the axis of resistance to keep Israel destabilized. The Houthi, Iranian militias, Syrian militias, Hezbollah, Hamas. So if Iran were to decisively engage, it changes the whole dynamic of this conflict from one where the axis of resistance, the Palestinians, are winning. It's a difficult fight. When I say winning, that doesn't imply they're ready to have a parade down Main Street. But it's ugly. The genocide is real. The death of these Palestinian civilians is real. This is a real struggle. It's not easy, but they're winning because Israel itself acknowledges it can't sustain this indefinitely. It can't even sustain it for another year. So if you're winning, why do you want to change the algorithm of success? And attacking Israel massively could do just that. It could trigger a response from Israel that includes the United States participating, something the United States has been hesitant to do. In fact, has said to Israel, we aren't going to participate in an attack against Iran. But if Iran strikes Israel with such ferocity that it threatens the strategic viability of Israel, the United States may have no choice, both from preserving a geopolitical posture in the region, but also from a political perspective, especially if Iran strikes now in the midst of a presidential election. Now Biden is saying, well, gosh, if I join in on this attack, I get involved in another Middle Eastern war. Trump has said that that's all I do. Do I want to empower Trump? If I do this, the economy is going to tank. That's going to hurt Harris. And so now American domestic politics factors into this. So, the Iranians are pretty savvy. They're very savvy people. They don't want to do anything that changes the trajectory. And I remember the trajectory isn't just focused on Gaza and creating a Palestinian state. Iran is worried about Iran. I mean, they are going to be a major presence in the upcoming BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia, in October. If there's a major Middle Eastern conflict, nations aren't going to attend the conference will collapse. All the work that Russia and Iran and everybody else has been doing to promote BRICS, to position it for success, will be undone. And so I don't see Iran willingly falling into that trap. And again, Netanyahu is constrained. He was able to carry out an assassination in Tehran, but he hasn't been able to carry out a massive attack because Israel lacks the capacity to do so without American help. And at this juncture, America is not inclined to help. And so we have a situation where, again, escalation management comes into play. But Iran doesn't want to. Iran's on a good trajectory right now, a good trajectory. They're leading an axis of resistance that's prevailing against Israel. And they're part of this growing multipolar world that challenges American hegemony, the rules-based international order. They're in a very good position. So I don't see too much pressure being placed on the Iranian government to launch a massive strike against Israel at this time.
Don't you think that they're trying to make the Iranian role on October 7th, the way that Gazans, Palestinians attacked Israel? They're trying to just make it unbelievable, because right now the Trump team is trying to say that the Biden administration sent the money to Iran. That's why Iranians were capable to provide Gazans with weapons and whatever they need. And they were able to attack Israel. Do you think it's part of this 2024 presidential election? It's something domestic, or they're really believing that Iran was behind all of this, and because of the money that the Biden administration sent to Iran, Iran was capable of doing that?
I think this is about domestic American politics. I think this is about exaggerating or manufacturing out of thin air Iranian intent, nefarious Iranian intent, etc. As I said, Iran's not in the business at this point in time of messing with the algorithm of success it currently enjoys. From the Iranian perspective, frankly speaking, it doesn't matter who wins this election. It doesn't. So why would Iran invest resources into trying to control the outcome of this election? Iran, like China, like Russia, has pretty much turned its back on the West. They're no longer concerned about, political nuances. Maybe there's a better chance to get sanctions lifted if so-and-so wins. Maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that. They don't care because, frankly speaking, regardless who wins, the policies are going to be bad towards Iran. The Democrats haven't articulated anything that sounds like, oh, we want to improve relations. The Republicans certainly haven't. And so I think the idea of Iran taking such a risk to get involved in a process that it has little chance of altering the outcome, it's absurd. It makes no sense. I don't think Iran is involved because Iran doesn't care. Iran believes that whoever wins is going to be bad for Iran. So therefore, the best thing to do is to solidify your new direction. Iran's no longer pivoted towards the West, hoping for better relations with either the United States or Europe. Iran has pivoted to the East, committed to a Eurasian economic union, a Eurasian security infrastructure, committed to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, committed to BRICS. That's the direction they're headed. So I think almost everything you hear about Iran interfering in the United States is manufactured. It's made up. It's speculative.
The point is that they're thinking that without Iran, Palestinians, Hamas was not capable of doing that offensive on Israelis.
That shows a lot of disrespect for Hamas. Did Iran play a role in arming Hamas? Yeah. There's no doubt in my mind that many of those weapons were provided by Iran. But Hamas is not incapable of developing its own capabilities. But again, let's just be real. Hamas wouldn't have been able to do October 7th with the resources it had available or sustain this resistance for 10 plus months with resources. If Iran wasn't involved in this, Iran has played a very, very big role in this. So, there is legitimacy to that argument that, this couldn't have happened without Iran's involvement. But it did happen. And it is the Gazans who are paying the price, which means that this isn't about Iran using Hamas as a tool. This is about Hamas asking for assistance because Hamas knows the direction it wants to go. So I think, that difference, speaks volumes about, the importance of the Iranian thing. Iran didn't invent this crisis. This crisis is because of the Nakba. This crisis is because of irresponsible Israeli policy over the years. This crisis is because of Israel's ongoing brutalization of the Palestinian people. Iran didn't make that up. But Iran is one of the few nations that has said, in fact, it's the only nation that has enshrined in their constitution support for Palestinian statehood. It's amazing that a Shia Persian state would be doing this when Sunni Arab states don't. And I'm talking about Saudi Arabia. I'm talking about the United Arab Emirates. I'm talking about Kuwait. I'm talking about, Qatar. I'm talking about all the nations that, Qatar at least, is there for them. But all the others, they've abandoned. I mean, Yemen's on the side of Gaza now, decisively so, at least the Houthi. But the big players, the guys with the big bucks, with the big resources, who claim to be regional leaders, have shown that they're just sellouts to the West.
And the other perception on the part of Washington, it seems that they're thinking that Iran is behind Houthis, behind Hezbollah, and Iran can control 100% their behavior. Do you think that has anything to the reality of and the nature of the relationship between Iran and these groups?
First of all, the Houthi exist in a historical context that has nothing to do with Iran. In fact, if you want to get down to the particulars of it, going back, the Houthi are practitioners of a version of the Shia faith that many Shia find to be, heretical. I don't want to commit to, so it deals with the numbers of Mahdis, or the emphasis they place on the order of succession from Ali. But the bottom line is they've taken the succession in a different direction than the Twelvers or the mainstream Shia faith that is in place in Iran. And there are many in the Iranian Shia community, and Iran is a heavily religious state governed by a theocracy, who viewed the Houthis as not being of true faith. So the idea that they're the loyal servants of Iran is absurd. But from a geopolitical standpoint, Iran has identified with the Houthi cause because they're pitted against some of Iran's major regional adversaries, Saudi Arabia in particular. So, the Houthi have a very close link with Iran, and their defenses are very much influenced by Iran. But the idea that the Houthi are automatically an extension of Iran and will do whatever Iran dictates, it's more complicated than that. The same thing you can say about Hezbollah. Iran has a relationship with the Shia of Lebanon, especially in the south, Bekaa Valley, south of the Litani River, where Iranian clerics came in to profess the faith. And so, and then there's intermarriages. And so there's just a family related linkage between the Shia of the South and Iran, that then became political when Israel invaded the South. A lot of people don't realize that when Israel went in 1982 and occupied South Lebanon, that the Shia were initially almost supportive of it because they felt that the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and that's the reason why Israel went in, is to purge the PLO, were not acting in their benefit, best interest, or Lebanon's best interest. But then the nature of the Israeli occupation was such that the Shia turned against it, and this created. You had the Amal movement, which is a Shia militia, but then the Amal movement fractured, and you started to see the rise of the influence of Shia clergy, and next thing you know, you have this entity created called Hezbollah, which is supported by Iran, not so much officially early on, but because of family. People were coming over because of intermarriages, and then because this is happening in the midst of not only an Iranian revolution, which is all consuming, but also the Iran-Iraq war. So Iran has a lot of things holding its attention here at home, and it's not like they're saying, oh, and we have so many resources that we can spin off down to Lebanon. So a lot of what happened because of family relations and things of that nature. But then it gradually grew into Iran providing support for Hezbollah, and there's been very close linkage between the two of them. But again, Hassan Nasrallah doesn't work for Iran. I mean, he, from a theocratic standpoint, yes, he is a believer in Vilayat-e Faqih, the supreme jurisprudence of the supreme leader. And from a religious standpoint, yes, that is true. But what influences Hassan Nasrallah isn't domestic Iranian politics, but domestic Lebanese politics. And so, the idea that he is just an absolute soldier of Iran, will do whatever Iran wants him to do when Iran wants him to do it, is again an exaggeration. There's definitely a linkage there. There's definitely influence, but there's a reality, a domestic Lebanese reality that has to be factored into everything Hezbollah does today, and that means that Hezbollah is politically independent of Iran. They're allied with, but politically independent of.
Nằm nghe sóng vỗ từng lớp xa, bọt tràn theo từng làn gió đưa, một vầng trăng sáng với tình yêu chúng ta, vượt ngàn hải ly cũng không xa. Biển rộng đất trời chỉ có ta, thì dòng ngân hà mình cũng qua. Biển không biên giới như tình anh với em, hơn cả những vì sao đêm. Trăng nhô lên cao, trăng gác trên đầu núi, mây xanh xanh lơ vì đắm say tình mới. Đến đây với em mà ngỡ trong giấc mơ, mắt em âu sầu là cả một trời thơ. Không gian im nghe nhịp đôi tim hẹn ước, mong sao tương lai đường trắng ta cùng bước. Siết tay dắt nhau mình lánh xa thế nhân, lánh xa ưu phiền đắng cay trần gian. Đời em sẽ đẹp vì có anh, ngày dài sẽ làm mình nhớ thêm. Biển xanh cát trắng, sông hòa nhịp ái ân, không còn những chiều bâng khuâng. Biển rộng đất trời chỉ có ta, thì thì dòng ngân hà mình cũng qua. Biển không biên giới như tình anh với em, hơn cả những vì sao đêm. Trăng nhô lên cao, trăng gác trên đầu núi, mây xanh xanh lơ vì đắm say tình mới. Đến đây với em mà ngỡ trong giấc mơ, mắt em âu sầu là cả một trời thơ. Không gian im nghe nhịp đôi tim hẹn ước, mong sao tương lai đường trắng ta cùng bước. Siết tay dắt nhau mình lánh xa thế nhân, lánh xa ưu phiền đắng cay trần gian. Đời em sẽ đẹp vì có anh, ngày dài sẽ làm mình nhớ thêm. Biển xanh cát trắng, sông hòa nhịp ái ân, không còn những chiều bâng khuâng. Biển xanh cát trắng, sông hòa nhịp ái ân, không còn những chiều bâng